Hello, everyone. This is Ross Heinersey. And first of all, I want to thank you for being a part of this YouTube channel with me and for being a part of this particular study that we're in. This is lesson number 2 on the paganization of American culture, how demonic spirits are influencing the culture and the people of the United States of America. And either in lesson 2 or in lesson 3, depending on how much time we have, we'll be revealing the three key spirits that are playing a role in American culture. And then, of course, we're going to give you biblical proven truth on how to combat these spirits and how to overcome by God's power. As we begin lesson 2, you will see in past videos that we shot live, we did lesson 2 last Sunday night at a friend's house. We usually have our Bible studies in a coffee shop here in Austin, Texas, but the coffee shop closed early. We didn't get notice. Things happen. They're wonderful people. The Lamppost Coffee Shop is not only incredible coffee, but incredible culture, just good people. And Megan, the GM, reached out to me. We talked this week, and everything's ready to go for Sunday, so we're excited about that. So we shot the lesson number 2 in a friend's house. The internet cut in and out a few times, and so it didn't allow for a good, smooth broadcast. So I'm going to redo that lesson now for you. And then we're also going to make lesson 3. We're going to try to keep these lessons anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes. And so this will end up probably being 4 lessons. We pray it's a blessing. If you have any questions or comments, of course, you can do that in the comment section. As always, I encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Ross Heinersey at 6112. Thank you to all those that have subscribed recently over the last 28 days. We've taken on 12 new subscribers. We're now over 200. Our end goal is to have 1,000. And here's the reason why. Right now, I can go live to you because I have 100 subscribers on YouTube. I can go live to you on my laptop here in my house. When I get to 1,000 subscribers, I can take the word that God has, the Holy Bible, and the words that God is speaking me specifically to give to this generation. And I can go live from anywhere on my phone through my YouTube channel when I have 1,000 subscribers. So those of you that are subscribers, thank you. Those of you that aren't, would you please subscribe and be a part of this with me, and let God have his way. Let's give God a greater voice through this medium and this opportunity that he's given me by inviting others to be a part of this with us. So let's pick up where we stopped. So we stopped with Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 6. Now, if you're familiar with Exodus chapter 20, it's where God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. Now, with that being said, he gave them on Mount Horeb. So here we are in Exodus chapter 20. Let me read verses 1 through 6. Here we go. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Commandment number 1, you shall have no other gods before me. Commandment number 2, you shall not make for yourselves a carved image any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands to those who love me and keep my commandments. So the 10 commandments were given with promise. They were spoken by God to Moses. And then God, with his very finger, wrote them on tablets of stone that Moses then gave and shared with the people of Israel. And you can read more about that as you continue to read the book of Exodus, past chapter 20, and find out how that all worked out in their lives. So some time ago during our family devotions here at our house, I asked my wife and the children as we were sitting around the table, and I said, how many gods are truly in existence that we know of? And there were various answers, and we had back and forth communication and talk about this. We discussed it. But then the consensus was there's only one true God, and that is 100% true. But the interesting part is that is not the whole story. There are actually demonic spirits that exist in the spirit realm, unseen to the natural eye most of the time. Now, they do reveal themselves in the natural realm, and we'll see that as time goes on. But for now, for the sake of understanding, there are demonic spirits that exist as gods in this world that we live in. They have direct influence on your life and mine. and they are making a huge impact on American culture and society. And they have been. They've gained momentum in the last, I'd say, 4 to 5 years, but they really started getting a stronghold in a substantial way in the late 60s, early 70s here in American culture. And now it's open display of the power and influence that they have. Now, here's the disclaimer. There is no being, spirit or human or otherwise, that has any equality with God in heaven. And there is only one true God, and that is Yahweh, God of the Bible, who goes by many names, and the different names are not because he's different gods, but they're different characteristics and revelations of his character. And these names do that. In fact, if you want to read a good book about the names of God, there's a number of them out there, but the one I enjoy the most is by Nathan Stone. Very simple book called The Names of God. And each name reveals his character. There's only one true God. Now, a lot of people will say, well, there's lots of roads to heaven. Oprah Winfrey, one of the famous talking hosts here in America, that is a billionaire, she has been made famous for saying, well, there's a lot of roads that lead to God. And then she's also flipped that. There's a lot of different gods that we can be led to. And they're all, and then other people will say, well, it's the same God in the Muslim faith, it's the same God in the Hindu faith, it's the same God, and they'll name these different faiths, and they'll say it's all the same God as the Christian God, it just goes by a different name. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, religions are superficially the same. On the surface, they're the same, but fundamentally, they're different. And maybe we'll do a video about that one day. But to go on with where we're at. So the correct answer is there's only one true God, but there's beings in existence who are less than God, but are more powerful than men or mankind. This is the unseen world of spirits. And these beings, which we call fallen angels, are known more readily as Shadim, or what we now call demons, are prevalent in society today. Some cultures actually call demons shades from the word Shadim, and it's taken from that word. But where does the word Shadim come from? It's a Jewish word, but it actually, the root of the word Shadim is the word shud, which means to act violently, to lay waste, to devastate. And then in the culmination of that thought, a shud or shadim is that which brings destruction. Now, if you remember in the Bible, in the book of John, chapter 10, in the New Testament of the Scriptures, it's a portion of the Scripture known as the Good Shepherd. And it talks about the evil one, the devil, Lucifer, one of these fallen spirits, in fact, the leader of the fallen spirits, the demonic hordes that exist within the world that we live in. And it says that this spirit, this evil one, came to steal, kill, and destroy. Everything Shadim or demonic spirits represent, they are represented in the person of Lucifer, or the one we now call Satan, or some call him Beelzebub. I just refer to him as the evil one. But it's one that brings destruction. It says that this evil one comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but Jesus said, I am come so that you could have life and that you can have it more abundantly. What a wonderful truth. So the word demon actually comes from the Greek word daimon, which was used when the Hebrew Bible was translated from the Hebrew to the Greek. And that's what we call the Septuagint. So when you have time, look that word up. It's Septuagint, Septuagint. And it's actually just a Greek translation of the Old Testament, what we call in Christianity the Old Testament of the Bible, what the Jewish people call the Bible. It's just a Greek translation of the Hebrew Scriptures. The word daimon, which is the Greek word, means God, godlike, power, or fate. Interestingly enough, here's a side note. In 1976, there's a movie that came out here in America called The Omen. There's a little boy that's basically the center point of the entire movie, and his name is Damien, which is a play on the word demon, and a literally transliteration of the word demon from Greek into English. The key person in the movie, his name is Damien Thorne, and in the movie, he's literally the child of the Antichrist, or the child of Satan, and literally the Antichrist. At least that's what the movie plays him up to be. Now, let me read you this from an online source about demons. Demons are lesser divinities or spirits, often personifications of abstract concepts, being of the same nature as both mortals and deities. They're similar to ghosts, spirit guides, forces of natures, or even the deities themselves. Now, realize I am not reading that out of the Bible or out of some theological book that was just off the internet. It's a resource off the internet that is giving you a more broad view of how we see what we call demons. Now, let me read to you Deuteronomy chapter 32, verses 10 through 18, as we continue to discover the influences of these spirits and how they are affecting our culture today. This is descriptive about the people of Israel. This is actually, I believe, the Song of Moses. In Deuteronomy 32, there's a song recorded that Moses sang to the children of Israel. And if you know, there's 34 chapters in Deuteronomy, and he passes away and passes on. Basically, this is his swan song. This is what he had to say about Israel. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 10. He, God, found Israel, him, in a desert land and in a wasteland, a howling wilderness. He encircled him, he instructed him, he kept him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirs up its nest, hovers over its young, and spreading out its wings, taking them up, he carries them on its wings. So the Lord alone led Israel, and there is no foreign God with him. He made Israel ride in the heights of the earth that he might eat the produce of the fields. He made him draw honey from the rock and oil from the flinty rock, curds from the cattle, and milk of the flock with the fat of the lambs, and the rams of the breed of Bashan, and goats with the choicest wheat. And you drank wine and the blood of grapes. This is just revealing how God has delivered Israel from the wilderness that they've been wandering in for 40 years. And it's really prophetic because he's saying you're getting ready to enter this promised land, which they had talked about before as a people. Moses had communicated this before. They're going into a land that flows with milk and honey. And now he's describing what that's going to be like when they get to where God has them. He's describing this process poetically as an eagle teaches her eaglets how to fly. Now we come to verse 15 through 18. Now, the word Jeshurun is used. It's a proper noun, and it's a poetic way to say Israel. But Jeshurun grew fat and kicked. You grew fat, you grew thick, you're obese. In other words, you've been more than well taken care of. Then he forsook God who made him and scornfully esteemed the rock of his salvation. They, being Israel, provoked him, being God, Yahweh, to jealousy with foreign gods. With abominations, they provoked him to anger. They sacrificed to demons. If you've got your Bible and you're reading along, pause this, go underline that they sacrificed to demons, not to God. Once again, he goes further. To gods they did not know, to new gods, new arrivals, that your fathers did not fear. Of the rock who begot you, you are unmindful and have forgotten the God who fathered you. Now, just like verses 10 through 14 were prophetic about what their life would be like in the promised land, this is the nation of Israel and God's promise to them, what it's going to be like. You're going to be blessed beyond measure. I'm going to teach you to fly on your own. I'm still going to be your God, but I'm going to release you into this blessing. He also then prophetically, he being Moses, prophetically shows them that when they're in that land, at some point on their journey and in their history, they will leave the worship of the one true God and begin engaging the worship of false gods, which are really demonic spirits that are personified through idols. All this came to pass. By the way, the name Jeshurun means upright one, and like I said, it's a poetic name of Israel. Now, the people of Israel were given a mandate by God. When they entered the promised land of Canaan, that we now call Israel, they were to destroy all the people that lived there, all of them, with no exceptions. In this very area of not eliminating and getting rid of everyone that's in that land, when they disobeyed even slightly in this area, They did so in a way that it became a stumbling block to the nation, just as Moses prophesied it would, and just as God knew it would. Now, some people take you hear this in the people that talk about the God of the Old Testament, how destructive and evil he is, because he was telling Israel to basically commit genocide. Let me ask you this: if you've got a people there, first of all, let me say this: the world is God, the earth is the Lord's. Read Psalm 24. This is all God's, and whatever he says to do, that's according to his will. That's what should be done. It's not the first time in the scriptures that God has literally wiped out not just people, but nations. Read Genesis 6 again. Read Genesis 19 again. In Genesis 6, he wiped out the world with the flood. Genesis 19 and 20, he wiped out two cities that were known for horrendous homosexual activity. Two places, Sodom and Gomorrah, really existed. You can scientifically see that folks have gone up, they've dug up around that area, and they found evidence that God rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed two communities in a moment. And so he's saying, look, when you move into this land, you're supposed to take everybody out, because if you don't, they're going to corrupt you. They're going to bring you to evil. They're going to lead you astray. They're going to cause you to stumble and fall as a people. And that's exactly what happened. And I'm reading you this because I'm going to show you in just a bit the close-knit, almost like a DNA that makes up the people of Israel, to a large extent makes up the United States in our history. But we'll talk about that in a moment. So I'm reading from notes. So if you see me reading, that's why, because I wanted to type this out so I get it said exactly the way it should be. So there were some very dark days in the life of the people of Israel due to their disobedience. And when they began to mingle with the people of those nations that they didn't destroy as God said, they also came under the influence of the demons that lived there. And by the way, demons have, if you read the book of Ephesians chapter 6, you find that we're fighting a spiritual battle. And I've read this in lesson 1, so you can go back and watch the video. But the demonic forces are talked about as principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, rulers of the heavens. And they've been assigned places of strength in this world to try to corrupt humanity. And it seems today they're winning in so many ways and in so many places. So when the people of Israel didn't destroy these people, they also didn't destroy their gods. And those demonic entities represented by those idols and by that worship then began to influence the people of Israel, which we'll see. So Israel, due to their disobedience and the demons that dwelt there, they began worshiping and serving them in the form of idols. And they were introduced to these idols and these demons by the people who still lived there. This came to bring the land and the people of Israel to grief, pain, and death. So when God commanded Moses and the people of Israel to have no other gods before me, he wasn't saying he had equals that would vie for their attention and affection. What he was telling them is there are demonic spirits who are very real. They have very real power, influence, and ability, and they will deceive many into believing they are indeed gods, when in fact they are not. God has no equal. When Lucifer rose up in heaven, who is now Satan, the evil one, Beelzebub, when he rose up against God in heaven, he actually convinced a third of the angels that they could take over heaven and take over God's throne, and God cast him out. So if the whole world of humanity and the whole world of the demonic spirits rose up against God, they could never overcome the omniscient, omnipotent God known as Yahweh, the God of the Bible. Now, the worship of these demons as gods took place in the form of idols. These graven images personified what the demons could do or what they were capable of doing. These first two commandments had such deeper meaning for the people of Israel than most of us realize. But as we see now through biblical history, the people of Israel were drawn into darkness time and again because of these false gods and the demonic spirits. This falling away from God brought grief and pain and destruction to their families, homes, and communities and nation. But how does this relate to us here and now? 3 of these spirits / demons have now entered Western culture. These demonic spirits, which I'm going to reveal hopefully by the end of this study tonight, have gained strongholds now in American culture, the same ones that were prevalent in the days of the people of Israel when they were a nation, and then, of course, dispersed through captivity. We know they became a nation again in 1948, but back in their heyday, back in their birthing and their living as a nation, these false gods played a huge role in taking them away from the one true God. And we see that constantly. So these demonic spirits have now entered Western culture. They gained a strong foothold in the USA in our present day and time. I want to reveal who these demons are from the Bible times, who were worshipped then and now have a place here now. And as we do, you'll be able to identify them by their actions, their activities that are taking place right now in our country. And I'm going to point out what's going on and how it's happening so that you can see this is not just hyperbole. This is not hype. This is literally what's taking place and has been for some time here in American culture. Now, let me read to you a couple paragraphs from page 11 here in the book by Jonathan Cahn. As we and this is the book, by the way, The Return of the Gods. Great book. This is what turned me on to what was going on or what is going on in our culture today here in America. I have a number of people in my chat that have said, I wish you were here in Australia and I wish you were in my country helping us, teaching us these things, or we wish we could be there. And so thank God the message is getting out across the world from a simple student of the word like me. But I'm thankful to God that he's led me to do this, because in your cultures and your countries, you're going to see these influences at work as well. Listen to what Jonathan Cahn has to say about these spirits that existed in the days of Israel. Not just in the days of Israel. Here it is. They haunted the ancient world. The fact that in the past 2,000 years they have not been everywhere is an exception to the rule. For most of recorded history, the gods were in every land and enthroned on the pinnacle of every major culture and civilization. And then he names these gods: the god Enlil of Sumer, Ra of Egypt, Amarok of the Arctic, Kukulkan of Central America, Wotan of Northern Europe, Dionysus of Greece, Abatala of Africa, Tiamat of Babylon, Bixia of China, Oro of Polynesia, Ahura Mazda of Persia, Perun of Russia, Shamash of Assyria, Dagda of Ireland, Juno of Rome, and Shiva of India, and countless multitudes of others. Wherever there were people in the ancient days, and even now, there were gods. They reigned over nations, cities, cultures. They even had influence on nature, over the underworld, and over the heavenlies. Their presence permeated the lives of their subjects. The people were bound to them. That the gods could appear in every land, transcending the many different distinctions, barriers of culture, to become a near universal part of human life, is a strange and peculiar phenomenon. To modern sensibilities, the phenomenon of the gods is a product of man's imagination, his projections, his fears, his desires, his fantasies. But what if there's more to it than that? And of course, there is. The reason we have so many cultures and peoples from across the entire face of the earth worshiping idols is not because it comes from man's imagination alone, but because demons cast out of heaven roam the earth looking for people to deceive and places to inhabit. Let me read to you from the oldest book of Scripture, the book of Job. Now, the book of Genesis contains the oldest history of mankind, as we were created by God in 6 literal days. And then on the 7th day, God rested, not because he was tired, but because he was done. But the oldest book in the Bible, as far as when it was written, not the history it records, but when it was written, is the book of Job. So from the very beginning of man writing books or writing truth down on papyrus or whatever they scrolls, this is what it says about the devil, the leading demonic spirit of this world. This is what it says about him and his activities. And this is how we can understand what's happening today. Job chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. Now there was a day when the sons of man came to present themselves before the Lord. and Satan also came among them. By the way, the name Satan means adversary. That's just the Hebrew word for the word adversary, Satan or Satan. And the Lord said to the adversary, Satan, from where do you come? Now listen to what his answer is. So Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth and from walking back and forth on it. Think about that now. Now, first of all, some of you be asking, why is God asking him? Doesn't God know everything? Didn't you just say moments ago, God is omniscient? He knows everything. God is asking a rhetorical question. He's holding the adversary accountable. God knew exactly where Satan was, what he was doing. We're not going to even get into the whole question of why does God allow evil to exist? But I will tell you this. We would never know what good is unless we also saw what evil is. One helps identify the other. We know how good God is because we see how evil the enemy is. But regardless of that, look at what the adversary of mankind, Satan, says to the Lord. He says, where have you been? What have you been doing? Where have you been? Oh, I'm just going back and to and fro on the earth, just walking around, just minding my own business. Wrong. He's seeking for more people to deceive. Read Genesis chapter 3. He deceived Eve, who brought her husband into that deception, and Adam jumped in 2 feet. I'm not giving him an out. He's just as wrong as she was. In fact, he could have led her back the other way and said, Eve, look, you've messed up. Let's tell God what you've done and get forgiveness. He jumped right into her sin with her. They're both just as guilty as the other. But the devil acts like he's just walking around, like, I'm just doing my thing. He's not doing his thing. He's looking for people to deceive. Listen now to some thoughts that are contemporary to that in 1 Peter chapter 5. This is the New Testament. 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 8 and 9. This is an admonition that Peter gives to the people, the church, and the people of God. He says, be sober and be vigilant, because your adversary, remember how I told you the word Satan literally means adversary? This Jewish writer, Peter, one of the apostles, one of the lead, Peter, James, and John, the inner circle of Jesus, what is he calling him? He doesn't call him Satan. He calls him your adversary, the demon. Because he says, you're Satan, the devil, your adversary, the demon. He says, your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Verse 9, 1 Peter chapter 5. Resist him, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. The demons are led by Lucifer, the one we call Satan, or as I prefer to call him, the evil one. Lucifer tried to replace God as Lord of all, but his coup up in heaven was no match for the power of God, and he and 1/3 of the angelic host were cast out of heaven for their rebellion. You can find this in Revelation chapter 12, verse 4. Now, pause and get a pen and paper, write these things down. Here's some verses you can look up to study more about Satan and his fall from heaven. Isaiah chapter 14, verses 12 through 15. Ezekiel chapter 28, verses 12 through 18. And in the New Testament, Luke chapter 10, verses 17 and 20 through 20. We won't read those now for sake of time. We have about 7 minutes left for this study. These cultures that Israel was supposed to remove completely, just to annihilate and get rid of completely, these cultures in Canaan were engaged with these demonic powers that are real and that were kicked out of the heavens by God himself. The idols that men make are to give men objects to worship and ways in which mankind can be deceived and manipulated. The great desire of these demonic spirits is to turn mankind's attention from God, the one true God, and turn mankind's heart against God. Turn our attention from God and turn our hearts against God. Let me read to you here on page 13 some thoughts from Jonathan Cahn's book. Remember, it's called The Return of the Gods, if you want to read it. This is some thoughts he has under the title, The Entities. This is page 13. In other words, the gods of ancient Canaan and Phoenicia to which the Israelites were then sacrificing were not simply the figments of pagan imagination, but actual spiritual entities. Likewise, the gods that the Gentiles worshipped and sacrificed to in the first century Roman Empire, gods with names like Jupiter, Apollo, Vesta, and Bacchus, were not simply the imagined or invented characteristics of pagan mythology, but were connected to spiritual entities, the daimonia, or the demonic spirits. From the Old Testament Hebrews to the New Testament Greek, the revelation is clear and consistent. Behind the gods of the pagan world were the Shadim, the daimonia, the spirits. I wanted to read a little bit more after that paragraph, so listen to what Jonathan continues to say. Worship is connected to spirituality. Spirituality is connected to the spirit, or which is God, or to the spirits, which are these demons. And spirits, as revealed in the Bible, can be either of light or of dark. Now, here's what's interesting. Let me throw this out here. We've got about 4 more minutes, and then we're going to wrap it up for this study. We're going to get to lesson 3 very soon. In New Testament times, the Church of God, mainly, if not almost 100% Jewish at its core and origin, before the gospel was then given to the Goy, or the Gentiles, or the nations, but the salvation of God was first given to the Jewish people. So the first missionaries that went out to spread the gospel to the Gentiles, to the nations of the world, were Jewish missionaries to Gentile people. Paul, Silas, Barnabas, different men like that were these missionaries. Now, here's what's interesting. They would go out, and God's Spirit would be so strong in them that people who didn't know the one true God and were worshiping false gods saw the power of the one true God in their life, and they would try to worship these men. But these men would deny their worship and say, "We are not God. Do not worship us. Worship the one true God." Now, the same thing has happened in the Old Testament. There were times when an angel of God was sent to deliver a message that people in those times were so strongly given to the power and awe of this angelic messenger that they would begin to worship this angel. And the angel would say, "No, you don't worship me. I'm just a representative of the one true God. Worship him and him only." Here's the difference between a good spirit and an evil spirit. A good spirit will not take any worship from man, but will point it all to the one true God. An evil spirit will present itself as being worthy of your worship and say, "Worship me, I'm worthy." And they'll receive it. That's an evil spirit. There's only one entity, one person that is worthy of any worship, and that's the one true God of the Bible. That's the God of Abraham, the God of Jacob, Isaac, the God of Jacob. That's the same God of Joseph and Mary, because Jesus was their God. God the Father is their God. This is the same God of Peter, James, and John, the same God of Paul, the great preacher and writer of the New Testament. This one God is one and the same, worthy of our worship. Every other God is a false God. We'll get back into this in the next lesson. I hope that's been a help to you. In the meantime, in the comment section, write any questions you might have. I'll try to address them. I can't promise you because my schedule's tight. I work a regular 40-hour-a-week job, and I have other things that pull up my time and attention. But God has purposed in my heart for me to share these truths with you. If you're enjoying this or it's interesting, feel free to subscribe, invite others to be a part of this, share this video if you think somebody needs to hear it. In the meantime, God bless, and we'll see you on lesson 3.